"You selfish trash," my mother Angela screamed across the terrace of the Sapphire Hotel. The ceramic pot in her hand tilted, and then the heat hit me. Scalding, fresh brewed coffee poured directly over my head, burning my scalp, running down my neck, and soaking into my thrifted gray hoodie. The pain was immediate and shocking, a physical assault that stole the breath from my lungs. But the sound that followed was worse. It wasn't a gasp of horror, it was laughter. My brother Christopher and my sister Amanda already had their phones out filming. The red recording lights blinked like tiny malicious eyes. I sat there, liquid dripping from my eyelashes, physical pain radiating down my spine, and realized with absolute clarity the bridge wasn't just burned, it had been nuked. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I pushed my chair back slowly and rose to my feet. I didn't brush the coffee from my face. I didn't acknowledge my mother, who was now breathing hard, chest rising and falling as if she had just finished a sprint instead of committing assault. I walked straight toward the hotel restroom, my boots striking the marble in a calm, measured rhythm that sounded steadier than I felt. Inside, I locked the door and leaned over the sink, gripping the porcelain as the burn intensified. My reflection looked feral, hair plastered to my skull with dark liquid, skin along my hairline and neck turning an angry red that promised blisters. Steam still seemed to rise from me. The urge to scream clawed up my throat, raw and primal. I wanted to storm back out there, overturn the table, send their fine china shattering across the terrace. I wanted them to feel heat, real heat, not the safe, curated version they used for content. But when I looked into my own eyes, I saw something else. They weren't watery, they weren't broken, they were flat and cold. If I screamed, they'd post it. If I cried, they'd replay it. They fed on spectacle. My mother with her manicured image obsession. My siblings with their chronic hunger for attention. They were addicts for reaction. A fight meant engagement. Engagement meant relevance. Silence, though, silence was starvation. When you refuse to perform, you become a mirror, and monsters hate mirrors. I grabbed paper towels and pressed them carefully against my neck, dabbing away the worst of the coffee. The skin felt raw, already tightening. I sucked in a sharp breath through my teeth, but kept my expression neutral. No tremble, no tears, not a single usable clip. When I stepped back onto the terrace, the noise had dimmed into a charged quiet. Christopher still held his phone up, smirking like he'd just captured something viral. Amanda's thumbs flew over her screen, already crafting a narrative. Angela stood rigid, arms crossed, waiting for contrition that would never come. I walked to the table but did not sit. I reached into my damp hoodie pocket and took out my wallet. I removed 4 crisp $20 bills, $80, my portion of a breakfast I hadn't touched. I laid the bills on the white tablecloth beside the empty coffee pot and smoothed them carefully so they wouldn't curl. Then I turned and walked away. "That's right, run," Christopher called out. "Go cry in your truck." I didn't slow, I didn't turn. The silence I left behind carried more weight than any explosion. It was final. They thought the camera meant power. They didn't understand they had documented their own downfall. I climbed into my 10-year-old Subaru, the interior filling with the bitter smell of coffee. My hands shook as I started the engine, not from fear, but from the abrupt drop of adrenaline. I pulled out of the parking lot and onto the highway, putting distance between myself and the people who happened to share my DNA. The argument had started over something laughably small. Christopher had pulled me aside before the food arrived. He needed $50,000. Just a bridge loan, he'd said smoothly, for his luxury watch dealership. Inventory squeeze, short-term opportunity. You can float it on a credit card, Emma. You've got good credit. He had no idea I had sold my AI safety startup, SafeMind, to Google DeepMind 3 weeks earlier for $110 million. He had no idea my net worth hovered around $250 million. In his mind, I was still the struggling freelance coder living in a cabin because I couldn't afford city rent. When I declined, calmly and without apology, the mask cracked. "You're selfish," he spat. "Mom bankrolls everything, and you can't even help family?" That was the match, my refusal to subsidize their illusions. My family lived on borrowed prestige. Christopher's Range Rover was leased and late. Amanda's lifestyle coaching business paid in exposure, while my parents quietly covered her condo. Angela rotated designer labels bought secondhand and returned after being photographed. Their lives were liabilities wrapped in luxury branding. I glanced at my stained hoodie and worn jeans. I owned my cabin outright. I owned my car. I owned my patents. And as of 3 weeks ago, I owned enough liquidity to erase their entire zip code. Wealth isn't noise. It's leverage. It's the power to say no and mean it. They didn't resent poverty. They resented independence. They sensed I wasn't trapped in the same web of payments and pretenses. That freedom unsettled them. My scalp throbbed, reminding me that freedom carries cost. I drove toward urgent care, my mind compartmentalizing. The emotional part wanted to mourn the mother I never had. The strategic part was already outlining charges: assault, harassment, defamation. They had tried to teach me my place at the family table. They were about to learn mine in the real world. This wasn't brunch drama anymore. It was a hostile acquisition, and I had never lost a negotiation. Back at my apartment, the only sounds were the refrigerator humming and the sharp hiss of burn spray against damaged skin. The mirror showed the injury clearly now, a blister rising behind my left ear, skin along my hairline red and angry, almost translucent. I didn't hide it. I needed to see it. I needed to remember what $50,000 of entitlement looked like when it was poured over your head. My phone vibrated on the bathroom counter, then again, then continuously. I wiped my hands and picked it up. Not an apology, a TikTok notification. I opened the app. Christopher's filtered face filled the screen. The video played. There I was, head bowed, coffee dripping from my chin while Angela screamed. Bold yellow caption text flashed over the footage: "When your broke sister tries to ruin brunch, taking out the trash." I scrolled. The comments were predictable. "She looks like a drowned rat. Good for mom. Stop mooching." Amanda had reshared it to Instagram with crying laughing emojis and the words, "Karma is served hot." They were celebrating, riding the high of validation, convinced they had written the ending. They didn't grasp that online narratives are volatile, context is currency, and markets turn fast. I didn't flag the video. I didn't respond. I captured 3 screenshots, one of the post, one of the caption, and one of the timestamps. I saved them to a folder on my encrypted drive labeled Evidence. Then I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. Not coffee. Never coffee again. I sat by the window and waited for the algorithm to do what it does best: find the truth. By Monday morning, the atmosphere had shifted. The air felt heavy, like the pressure dropped before a hurricane. I was in my home office, a converted bedroom in my cabin overlooking the valley, reviewing code for a new neural network architecture when my personal cell phone rang. It was Alina, my head of public relations. "Emma," she said, her voice tight, "have you seen Twitter?" "I've seen TikTok," I replied, typing a command into my terminal. "It breached containment," Elena said. "It hit tech Twitter about an hour ago. A former intern recognized you. The view count is at 4 million and climbing vertically. They know who you are, Emma. They know you founded SafeMind. They know about the DeepMind acquisition." I pulled up Twitter on my second monitor. The hashtag SafeMind was trending. The top post was a side-by-side comparison. One image of me on the cover of Wired magazine looking polished and formidable, the other a blurry screenshot from Christopher's video of me soaked in coffee. The caption read, "This family just assaulted one of the most important women in AI because she wouldn't loan them 50 grand. They have no idea she's worth 9 figures." The comments were a landslide of horror. "That's Angela Mercer," one user identified. "She's on the board of the Arts Council." Disgusting. Another user had already found Christopher's dealership. "This guy sells watches on commission, and he's bullying a self-made multi-millionaire? The math ain't mathing." "Do you want us to issue a takedown?" Elena asked. "We can have it scrubbed." harassment policy violation. It'll be gone in 10 minutes. No, I said. My voice was calm, steady. Leave it up. Emma, it's humiliating. It's not humiliating for me, Elena. It's illuminating for everyone else. Let it play. Let them see exactly who these people are. I hung up. The narrative had flipped. I wasn't the broke sister anymore. I was the underdog titan. The public didn't just see a family squabble, they saw a group of parasites attacking the host. I watched the retweet counter spin like a slot machine. The villain's escalation had just met the professional escalation. They wanted attention. I was going to give them the world. Tuesday morning, Christopher stood on the showroom floor of Timeless Luxury, adjusting his cuffs. He was probably checking his phone, waiting for more likes, unaware that the ground beneath his feet had already liquefied. He didn't know that my venture capital firm, Apex Ventures, had been busy over the weekend. We hadn't just bought a watch, we had acquired the controlling stake in the parent company that owned his franchise rights. It was a small acquisition for us, a portfolio diversifier, but it gave me a very specific authority. His manager approached him, holding an iPad. "Mr. Mercer?" The director said, his voice clipped. "We have received thousands of complaints regarding a video you posted. Gross misconduct, conduct damaging to the brand reputation, hostile behavior." "It's a private family matter," Christopher stammered, his confidence evaporating. "It's just a joke." "There is nothing funny about assault," the HR representative cut in, "and there is nothing private about 4 million views. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out." "You can't do this. My sister—" "Your sister," I said, unmuting my microphone but leaving the camera off. My voice filled the room, amplified by the conference speakers. "Your sister is the majority shareholder of the holding company that signs your paychecks, Christopher, and she has a zero-tolerance policy for bullies." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. "Pack your desk," I said, "and leave the demo watch. You can't afford it." I ended the call. One down. They came to my gate on Thursday. It was inevitable. When a narcissist loses control, they don't reflect, they attack. It is a psychological phenomenon known as narcissistic collapse. The facade crumbles, the grandiose self-image is punctured, and what spills out isn't remorse, but pure, unadulterated rage. They cannot process shame, so they convert it into aggression. They have to destroy the mirror that showed them their true reflection. I watched them on the high-definition security monitors from the safety of my kitchen island. Angela's luxury sedan, leased of course, was idling aggressively at the iron gates of my estate. I had bought this property under an LLC 6 months ago, 20 acres of woodland, a modern glass fortress, completely invisible from the road. They must have paid a private investigator to find the address. Angela was leaning on the intercom buzzer, her face distorted by the camera lens. Christopher was pacing behind her, kicking at the gravel, looking like a man who hadn't slept since he lost his job. "Open this gate," Angela screamed. The audio was crisp, filtered through the high-end system. "You tricked us. You let us think you were poor. You liar." That was their narrative now. Not that they had burned me, but that I had deceived them. In their twisted logic, my success was a betrayal because I hadn't shared it. They felt entitled to the wealth they had mocked me for not having. "We know you're in there, Emma," Christopher yelled, leaning into the camera. "You owe me my job. You owe us." I pressed the talk button. I didn't open the gate. "You are trespassing on private property." "Trespassing?" Angela shrieked, her voice cracking. "I am your mother. You have millions, millions, and you let me wear last season's coat? You let us struggle, you ungrateful, manipulative—" "I am not your mother," I corrected, my voice flat and metallic through the speaker. "I am the selfish trash you poured coffee on, remember? Open the gate, Emma. We need to talk about compensation. You embarrassed us globally. We are going to sue you for defamation." Truth is an absolute defense against defamation, Angela, and the video you filmed is the only evidence I need. I glanced at the second monitor. A black SUV was pulling up the driveway behind their sedan, lights flashing silently. Also, you should know that I have a restraining order pending based on the assault. The police arriving behind you are here to enforce it." On the screen, blue lights reflected off Angela's car. Christopher froze, his aggression evaporating instantly. Angela looked at the approaching officers, then back at the camera, her face crumbling from rage into fear. "Goodbye," I said. I cut the feed. The silence that followed was expensive. It was the silence of a high-end HVAC system, of triple-paned glass, of absolute safety. 2 weeks later, the dust had settled into a thick, permanent layer over my family's old life. Christopher was unemployable in the city. The viral video was the first thing that popped up when anyone Googled his name. Amanda had lost her sponsorship deals. Brands do not like influencers who laugh at assault. Angela was essentially under house arrest, too ashamed to show her face at the club where the incident happened. I sat on the deck of my cabin, the mountain air cool against my healing skin. My phone buzzed. It was a lawyer, but not one I had hired. It was Grandma Rose's attorney. "She wanted you to know immediately," the lawyer said. "She has rewritten the will, the estate, the trust, the property. It is all being transferred to you." "I don't need it," I said. "I have enough." "She knows," the lawyer replied. "That is exactly what she said. She said, 'Give it to Emma. She is the only one who didn't need it, which is why she is the only one who deserves it.'" I hung up. I looked out at the tree line. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel giddy. I felt light. The weight of their expectations, their cruelty, their noise, it was all gone. I picked up my phone, opened the family group chat one last time, and pressed delete group. Then I whistled for my dog, climbed into my truck, and drove toward the horizon. The rear-view mirror was empty, and the road ahead was entirely mine.